Once upon a time, two friends joined forces to bring you the best in horror entertainment. Brian from the north, Tim from the south, each bringing their own unique perspective to the horror community. Movie reviews, Blu-ray releases, beer pairings, games, and more. Welcome to your new home for horror. This is Civil Gore.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Civil Gore Podcast. I'm your host, Tim.
And this is Brian. And we have a really fun show today. Tim picked a really good one. I think good movie. We were looking to see something interesting. And Shudder is doing this whole, like, Argento kind of deal where they have that new documentary. And so he picked Two Evil Eyes, which is an Argento. Think about this, Argento Romero collab. I mean, come on, that's like two best breweries in the nation collabing, you know, kind of thing. It's kind of cool.
And I had never heard of this one. I had thought of the idea because the new, I think it's called Panico.
Panico, yeah.
The Argento documentary that's coming out that I really want to watch. I was hoping I could watch it before this podcast. I just didn't get a chance.
Yeah, same here.
I was like, you know what? That'd be great to do an Argento movie in celebration of that documentary coming out. And I saw that Shudder had put all these Argento movies on. And I wanted to do one that I haven't seen before, obviously. And I had never heard of Two Evil Eyes.
And I haven't either. And what's interesting is these are based on Poe stories on top of it all. So this is like really like this is right up our alley. I think that this.
Yeah, and that's why I was shocked that I had not heard of it before. And then I started looking at the cast list, and you got Adrian Barbeau, you've got Harvey Keitel, and I'm going, what?
Which we will be discussing Harvey Keitel.
Yes. So it ended up being a great pick, even though it was like completely just like off the cuff and random. But sometimes those are some of the best ones to talk about because the ones that you haven't seen or haven't heard of are way easier for me and Brian to talk about than the ones like Halloween or Texas Chainsaw Massacre that have been analyzed to death.
Yeah, you don't want to hear
40 years.
Yeah, you don't want to hear that. Like, I mean, yes, we'll do them, but you also don't want to, you know, I feel like people tend to pay attention more to when it's something that they might not know of either than, you know, because like everyone has their opinion on Halloween, on Shining, on Jaws, on all these big iconic horror movies. I mean, it's still fun to talk about, but I think there's a better like discussion per se on this, because also those movies too have been so watered down with conversation that sometimes like your own thoughts get blended in with other people's that you heard, and you don't even know anymore what you're talking about half the time.
I get real imposter syndrome when I have to talk about something like Jaws or Halloween, and I'm like, I feel like, am I even qualified to talk about this? Even though I know I am because I've seen the movie dozens of times, but I'm still like second guessing myself the whole time I'm talking. Like, am I really qualified to talk about Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th or, you know what I mean? It's like this weird, I don't know, but you know, these little weird off the cuff oddball movies, those are the ones that I like to talk about because there's probably not a whole lot of experts on them. So if I screw something up, I'm probably not going to get caught out on it.
I mean, I'm sure a podcast has discussed this. I'm sure we're not the first, of course.
No. Definitely with it being an Argento film, but it's. I have to think if I had not heard of it and you had not heard of it, it's got to be a little bit lesser known in like mainstream circles.
Well, I'm wondering if it's even like really like. You know, I mean, technically, because, you know, he only did one of the stories. It's two stories, basically. Hence the Two Evil Eyes name, I guess. And it's got, you know, it's basically, I guess it's a very, like, small or anthology, I guess. Even though it runs almost 2 hours, but it's only two stories. But I guess it could be considered an anthology. I mean, there's multiple stories. So I'm wondering how many people, like, consider this, like, a true Argento movie, or is it just one he worked, you know, he did?
Yeah,
you know,
kind of like that could be.
So,
but we have a pretty good first chop because we've been both working on the Horror 365 challenge. So let's get right to that.
Yeah.
All right, Brian. So I only had a couple. I mean, work has been just absolutely, as you know, has been absolutely insane this month.
Yeah.
So I have.
It's amazing we get a podcast recorded at all with Tim's schedule.
I know. I've been so burned out at the end of the day. Like I seriously am so mentally drained. I don't even want to watch a movie because it requires too much thought. So a lot of times I just do something else besides watch a movie. I have to do something like really brainless, like play, you know, like a really simple video game or something just to get my mind off work. But I did get a few in here that were I watched a few weeks ago actually that were part of the Horror 365 challenge, which I'm way behind on, but I hope to catch up at some point. First one was Infinity Pool, which I did not get to see last year. That one is the Brandon Cronenberg film. obviously I'm a big David Cronenberg fan, and I was really interested when Brandon came out with Possessor, which I really liked.
Yeah, that was good.
And this one, I think I like this one more than Possessor, actually. I thought this one has a very similar feel to it. He's definitely got a style. Definitely similar feel, but I actually like this one better than Possessor. Kind of the same, little bit of sci-fi twist to it. It's about a group of people. It's got Mia Goth in it. It's got Alexander Skarsgård, two great actors. So it's about this group of people that are at a resort, wealthy people that are at a resort, and they accidentally commit a crime. And I don't want to give too much of the film away, but the residents at this resort, the wealthy at this resort, have a way of getting people out of crimes in a very dark and disturbing manner. And this opens up the door to them being able to commit crimes freely because they know they can always get out of it. So you see this like really dark spiral of wealth and privilege, and it's definitely a commentary on wealth and privilege, and it's really I thought it was super cool, had some super cool effects and things in it, and a really dark storyline. So I would highly recommend Infinity Pool, especially if you like Possessor. I think you'll like this one even more.
Yeah, and I mean, I have it. I bought the Blu-ray, which had the digital copy, so it's in there. I have it.
Yeah, definitely put that one on your 365 list.
Oh yeah, no, it's on there because I do actually have a list I'm pulling off of, but sometimes I'm trying to go. Sometimes I'll do what Jeff Whitmire does. I just flip on Screenbox or Shudder and see what's anything that's like, because sometimes I'm like tired at the end of the day, like you, and I want to watch something, but I want to watch something quick. So I'll actually go on there, and actually Screenbox has a thing. It says they have an under 90 minutes tab.
Oh, cool.
Which is kind of has been helpful, and it's gotten a couple of movies that way I've gotten because it's like quick watches or something that's called. It's something like that. But basically this movie's under 90 minutes. That's pretty helpful when you're trying to watch them. You want to watch something, but you don't think you could sit through something like 2 hours. So yeah, that definitely helps on those kind of things. A couple of ones I watched a few. One I want to do is that Life of Bell, which is that it was free premiere on the Terror Films YouTube page. And they had like a chat going along with it on the side, kind of like, like those, like the old school, like Coaster Radio watch along things like that.
Yeah.
So they're like a Kim and Ket thing that they do. So I didn't really participate in that. I started it a little late into it. So I just kind of, rewound stuff from the beginning. So the chat was off. So I closed the chat and didn't pay attention. But the movie is really well done. It was like, I guess it's like just a family kind of did it. And definitely had like some Skinamarink vibes in it, the way they do it, without giving much away. If you watch it, and it's easy. It's short too. It's again, I think that's under 90 minutes, in fact, and it's very, one of those really like kind of disturbing like found footage movies in a good way. Like it was meant to meant to bother you, because it's the topic of what goes on with this poor family and the missing daughter, but. Definitely some creepy imagery, really well done. The performances seemed pretty legit, which is always good for found footage. Because, you can get a bad found footage film by being thrown off by just someone that does, like, I don't know if they're trying to act too much or whatever. But
that's the one thing that really throws me off on found footage. Like, to me, that separates good found footage films from not, is found footage more than any other type of horror movie requires you to believe that it's really happening.
Right.
And if you have bad acting or acting that's more suited for a non-realistic type movie, then it can really draw you out of it. And I think it hurts the movie. But I've seen some found footage movies that I'm like, how the heck did they get these performances out of people that aren't even actors? Yeah. So sometimes those are the best ones.
Yeah. And see, this one I think did that really well. And it was, I think for, for me, it probably wasn't even as disturbing as someone like if you watched it, Tim, because of the whole, there's like basically the family is a couple and their young son and daughter. And, you have a son and daughter. And, so I think it would, like, for someone like people with kids, I think it'll be more disturbing to see what happens in there. But it's definitely worth the watch especially it's free. It's on, like, their YouTube channel, and they brought it out for free. So I'm hoping to see more from this that group that made it.
That one's on my list for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and do another one of yours.
Oh,
since
do
you've
another.
got,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. There's another one. I've been on a found footage kick actually lately. So I watched this other one called Banshee Chapter. Have you heard of that one?
No.
So this was really weird. It's got like Ted Levine in it, which is automatically I'm like Ted Levine in a found footage movie. Okay, I think I gotta kind of see this now. Yeah, no, it was really good. It's kind of like it had a little bit of horror sci-fi element to it. I'll read the official description. Basically, and then see what it gives it a good idea, because I don't want to spoil this because there's a lot of twists and turns in this one. It says journalist Anne Rowland explores the disturbing links behind her friend's sudden disappearance, an ominous government research chemical, and a disturbing radio broadcast of unknown origin. So it's definitely got really. It's kind of a. I say pseudo found footage because it's like they use a lot of like, oh, this on this tape was this and that, but there's also a lot of dramatic stuff in there too, like that. So it's kind of, but I wouldn't say it's a cheat because it's like I don't think they try and make it seem like you're only getting a found footage thing. But so there's like a dramatic storyline mixed with found footage, a lot of it. So it's that's why I call it pseudo found footage. But overall, like the performances are really good, and Ted Levine is just like good in whatever this guy does. And like in this, he's like really good. He plays like this wacko druggy kind of guy in it. So it's but it's really good. And there's some creepy imagery in there, and there's a lot of jump scares in this, which I was surprised at. So Tim, you might have to like there's your jump scare warning for this one. A lot of
Yeah, I have to stay away from that one.
Yeah, but it's good though. It was actually really surprising. I never even heard of it, which is what's weird. So
yeah. The next one up I had, I guess we'll continue with the found footage theme. This was Devil's Pass, and it was originally titled The Dyatlov Pass Incident. Well, that really struck me because I'm a big fan of the Dyatlov Pass mystery, which is a real life mystery.
Yeah.
And this was back in, I believe in the 50s, that a group of Russian hikers were hiking in the remote, snowy, ice-filled mountains of Russia, in this area called the Dyatlov, or I guess is now known as the Dyatlov Pass. And something happened. We don't know what, but they were found with various articles of clothing off, their tents destroyed. They were all found dead. And there's been several, the theories of how they died have gone everything from like Russian weapons testing to aliens to Yetis to the most realistic explanation I've seen, which I read a book recently within the last year called The Dyatlov Pass, something Dyatlov Pass, and it was a real a guy went over there and really investigated it more than I've seen other investigators investigate. He dug deep, this guy, and his ultimate conclusion was it was an avalanche that killed these guys.
That makes the most sense if you're gonna really logic, and usually the simplest solution in some ways is the correct one. It's more, sure, it's fun to speculate and add all these.
Yeah, and I've even read a horror novel about the Dyatlov Pass, and in that one it was Yetis that killed him, which was great. That was a fun book. But so it's a big mystery. I kind of consider it quote unquote solved because that book was so convincing that it was an avalanche. I kind of was like, you know what, that's probably the right answer. But still, I was definitely interested to see a horror movie based on this, and I was really surprised that it was actually found footage. And they do a really good job. This one, the acting's really good in it. They used actual photos from the incident to kind of set up the story, so you're immediately immersed in this thing. They and this group of, as you might expect, a group of Americans go over and try to recreate the trek of the Dyatlov group.
Okay,
and they of course are aware of what happened, but they're kind of just trying to recreate their steps. And of course, without giving, I don't think this is a spoiler, something happens, which is not good. So I really like this one. I thought it was really well done. The only complaint I had, and I think I mentioned it when I posted on Twitter, is it gets a little CGI heavy at the end, which kind of detracted from it. But other than that, I thought it was definitely entertaining, especially if you are a fan of the Dyatlov Pass mystery like I am.
Nice. Well, you know why the actual original group went through it faster, right? Than this American group, because they were Russian. So, That was
I
terrible.
should have seen that one coming.
I know. How did you not see that coming? We've been,
I
how
have
long
no
have we
idea.
known each other and done a podcast together? But anyway, that was terrible. But yeah, no, I actually want to see this one. It's funny because Tim watched Devil's Pass. I watched Devil's Trail, and I posted it as Devil's Pass. So it's too many. They got to stop creating movies with titles that are too close and making them found footage on top of it. But anyway, one of the other ones I watched two of them, two more. I watched a bunch more, but I'm just trying to do the highlights. One was called The Glass Coffin, which again I found on Screenbox, and this one was really interesting. It's because basically it was this actress. I guess she's getting an award. Is the little bit of a setup you get, and because you hear about this on the phone. She's getting like some kind of lifetime achievement award or something. So a limo comes to pick her up, and she gets in there. And basically, while she's in there, she realizes that like she's been traveling a little bit further than she should have, and then basically she realizes that she's been set up, and there's a like the limo driver's in on it, but there's a voice that's basically instructing her what she has to do, and she has to like do all these acts of different types of different nature things, like sexual nature, like violent. She's basically forcing her to do these acts in there while while this whole mystery unravels on why it's happening to her and who's doing it. And it's really well done. So it's very claustrophobic because like 90% of the movie takes place in this big limo in the back. That's kind of got its own. It's got this whole big screen set up. It's like looks like a cool limo, which would be awesome if you weren't being if the woman wasn't being like kidnapped essentially in there. And it's like, and there's actually surprisingly some creepy imagery towards the end of it that really ends up surprising. And the twist of it makes it doesn't like. How sometimes they'll set this up and they'll do some kind of stupid twist to it, but I think the twist on who ended up being the basically the antagonist to this was actually really good, and it had a cool backstory to it and made a lot of sense. And so it's really well done. And again, it was pretty short. It was under 90 minutes, but it felt like it was like. It didn't feel like they were rushing anything in there. Like it felt like it was just like it did the exact time because it was kind of real time, so it made sense.
Oh yeah,
it all played out in real time, so it was really good. That was good. The other one I watched, which is one we actually promoted and gave away the digital copies for, which was that Blumhouse Unseen. Remember, it's the one where the girl escapes Midori Francis, who's really good. She's in that Sex Life of College Girls show on Max. So she was in this, and she basically she escapes her abusive boyfriend, and just boom. I mean, this movie comes in at full blast. Second this thing starts, she's escape. So that's not a spoiler. She escapes her violent boyfriend, and basically she breaks her glasses and her vision is horrible. So now she's wandering in the woods, and she manages. Someone had earlier accidentally dialed her phone, so she can't see, and it was a wrong number. But she dials it back, and it turns out to be this poor woman who's got this dead end job at this gator themed convenience store in Florida. And so she goes, so basically she convinces her, she goes, look, I need you to be my eyes. So basically they FaceTime, and she's carrying around her phone and showing it while the girl in the convenience store is trying to guide her in. And you figure, okay, pretty simple plot, but not only is this craziness, but the boyfriend chasing her around in the woods, but this poor convenience store girl is being harassed and abused by a crazed Missy Pyle who's so good at it. She plays this total Karen of a customer, and just everything is going wrong while on her end at the convenience store while she's trying to guide this girl through the woods. It's very
great.
Yeah, and it moves really quick. It's a very quick paced thing because as you can imagine, there's a lot going on, but it's so it's almost like oh my god, I can't believe now this is happening. It's one of these things where it's actually really well done, and it's really, the performances in it are amazing, especially Missy Pyle when she comes in and plays that crazy type of person. She just steals the movie. The way, you remember how good she was in Josie and the Pussycats?
Yeah. She's so good at playing a Karen.
Yeah.
I hate to say that because I'm sure she's not a Karen in real life, but
No,
she's so good at playing one.
She's probably like the sweetest woman in real life. In this, she's like a Florida Karen. So you can imagine at like all crazy levels. And it's nuts what goes on in there. And like you think she's only in it for a brief part, but she keeps coming back through the movie. It's great. So that one I highly recommend too. It's really fun one. That would be the one like you probably watch with the kids too. It's kind of funny. Like, they might get a kick out of it. Like they might have fun watching that.
Nice. So I guess
just the Joe Bob real quick.
Yeah.
So Joe Bob had his very violent Valentine last night. It was for movies that both were only an hour and a half. This thing went on from like I think it started at 6 my time. It didn't end till after 11, so it was over 5 hours.
Wow,
for
really?
2 movies.
He must have talked a lot between them.
He did. Well, they had this board of like different kink fetishes on there that they would reveal through the interstitials, and it was funny. And Darcy had 2 cosplays, and Darcy was on fire last night because she was just cracking up at like some of the lines that she was saying, like because Joe Bob would give the kink official name and she'd have to guess what it is, and one of them was like I forgot, it was something for Maiko, and he goes, "What do you think that is, Darcy?" And she's like, "I don't know, sex on a kitchen table." It wasn't, spoiler alert, but it was just so funny the way they did it. And then like just all the Joe Bob and Darcy interactions last night were like some of the best. So when it comes on to demand, you should watch it. And the movies they picked were Freeway, which is not really horror, but it counts in the challenge because it's on Shudder, and Jeff Whitmire gave the approval, so I go to him on those. And there was enough horror elements in there for it to be horror, and I'd never seen that. It's like one of these movies where I always remember the Reese Witherspoon cover art, but it's kind of like a play on like the Little Red Riding Hood. Essentially, it's like that's the kind of the story that like that it's based on, which is weird because it's really nothing like it other than she's, but if you look at the whole, like the scenes in it, you can see where it's based on Little Red Riding Hood, which is very weird. And then they did Vamp, which is another movie, which for some reason I just realized I had never seen. And it's such a mean movie. It's like an 80s movie.
It's such an iconic cover.
Yeah, it's got Grace Jones, it's got Gabe Watanabe. Or Watanabe, I guess I always say his name. I used to always say his name wrong, and I can't get that out of my head. So you can imagine there were a lot of like long duck dong 16 candle gifts going out through that movie, and he played this like rich guy in it, which is kind of funny. And then Chris Makepeace, which was like an early 80s icon that kind of just fizzled away. And who else? Oh, that guy, I forgot his name, but the one he was in Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and Weird Science. Not the Robert Downey Jr.'s like friend in Weird Science. Remember the other kind of obnoxious guy in it? He was in there. So a lot of and of course like Sandy Barron, who plays Jack Klompus, take the pen. So there was a lot of Seinfeld memes going through that thing last night because Jack Klompus was in there. I did a Seinfeld gif for actually the Freeway for like there was a sequence, and then there was what was the other one that everyone was like laughing at in there? Oh, Dee Dee Pfeiffer. She was from Seinfeld. I remember she had an episode on Seinfeld too. But there was just like a lot of like funny like Jack Klompus gifs going out through the movie, which is so random for Vamp. But yeah, but I enjoyed them both, and it was overall just a really like nice way to kick off the exciting weekend of Super Bowl. The last thing I wanted to talk, I figured we had to at least touch on. Not the entire announcement of Epic Universe at Universal Studios, just about the Dark Universe.
Oh
thoughts.
Man, I am
because
so excited.
I'm mixed a little on it. I'm excited, but there's a little bit of things I'm a little concerned with about it. But we can discuss it. So first of all, what we're referring to is Universal. I mean, it's the worst kept secret. I mean, we've known this, been working on this for years, and everyone knew that there was a monster section in there. But what Universal did was release like a 6-minute long video. And they only briefly touched on the other lands. They mostly focused on that Celestial Gardens, which
this
is
like
a
third park.
center.
For those that don't know, it's an actual third gate.
Third park, third full theme park, not counting the water park or anything. But so and basically, it's the theme is you go enter these portals, and you go to different lands. There's like another Harry Potter land, Celestial Gardens, which is the main area. How to Train Your Dragons land. Am I missing one? Oh, the Super Nintendo land.
Super Nintendo land. Yep.
And Donkey Kong Country section, and then, of course, the Dark Universe. Now, I'll start with my criticism. quickly on this, and it's a minor one. It's the fact that it's not necessarily the full classic Universal monsters, which I had hoped. It's basic because if you looked at the Dracula, that is not Bela Lugosi's Dracula. It's like this modern Dracula on the logo that I saw. So I'm a little
I
concerned.
haven't seen the logo. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a thing out there. It's a Dark Universe. Now that may not be the full thing, but I mean, Mike and EB were talking about it on their podcast too. That it's more the current version. But he said, but they made it in a way that it sounded whereas I have a little bit more optimism. They said it's like something about how it takes the old stuff and but you kind of gradually get it modernized. And so because if you look at the structures they're building are still that old school looking.
Yeah,
structures.
and I think the Dark Ride's going to probably be
and the Dark Ride,
which
is supposed to be legendary. And if it's anything like that, I don't know if you saw that Jurassic Park Dark Ride at Tokyo Universal or Universal Japan or whatever it's called, which is like ridiculous. They literally have a dinosaur animatronic come out and chase your vehicle at one point. So I mean, they're like. That's what there's, and they said actually, Mike and EB were confirming this. They said there's really no screens in this, so it's not all screen based. So it's all going to be physical, animatronic, and props that you're going to be going.
I think it's
through.
going to be probably one of the best Dark Rides on the planet when it's
and that's the rumor. That's what they're.
Yeah.
I think even like they had Seth Kubersky on, who does those unofficial guides to Universal and Disney and all that, and he was saying he heard that too. He said like the rumors are that like it could be like literally the best Dark Ride to come out at this point. And that's got a tough bill because there's some good ones out there, but like, right now I think everyone's saying, which hopefully trying in a couple of months finally is I think we're trying to go to Disney, was Rise of the Resistance. But so hopefully it'll be like, it'll be so next level that it won't matter. Like if they tweak the Dracula look a little bit. Like what I'm thinking is this is the way I kind of take it towards the end, where it's more a modernized look of the classic Universal monsters, but still kind of in that classic time period is what it might seem like.
Yeah. Well, I think they have to, because kids these days, unfortunately, a lot of kids don't know the Universal monsters. They're not going to go back and watch movies from the 30s. So I feel like I think they're kind of straddling the fence there with trying to appeal to like old fans and new fans and kind of, you know what I mean? I feel like they're kind of like, if they went pure like 1930s, I think people might come off dated or something. I don't know.
Yeah, which is, hence why they probably eliminated that Monster Cafe, which was all that.
Yeah,
and, maybe they're trying to like kind of prep people. We're kind of moving up a little. We're going to give you the classic monsters, but with a little bit of a twist to it. And I'm okay with that if it turns out. Yeah, there's also that experience that you can create you can get yourself. It's almost like that Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, but for Tim and I, where you can go in there and get there's something like 75 different monsters you can become.
Yeah,
it's
expensive. It's like $125, but still, for the podcast.
Tim and I already said that next time we do a Universal trip together, that is a guarantee. I'm sure Tim will go as the creature. I'm not sure who I'd go as yet. Maybe like the Wolfman or something.
Well, here's a question, Brian. Do you think they will move Halloween Horror Nights to this new park, or do you think it'll stay where it is?
That's
because of the Dark Universe. I've thought about that.
That is a good choice. I think if they did, it would not be for some time, because that park is already going to be crowded enough, like for its first couple of years. The anticipation on this is ridiculous. So,
and my other thought too was Universal Studios proper, not Islands of Adventure, but the basic Universal Studios is definitely their, aside from Harry Potter. Obviously, the Harry Potter is a big draw there, but the rest of the park is arguably their weakest park. And I think Halloween Horror Nights adds something to draw people to that park, during that season.
And also it's made for that essentially because it's got those big sound stages where they can put the haunts in. And remember, we read that really good book. Tim and I each read that book, The History of Halloween Horror Nights, and there was a time when they used Islands of Adventure for part of it and. Both places. It was like a dual park because they're connected, and there's one spot I guess where they almost like line up back to back. I guess the parks, and there was a walkway through they had or something. I was hard to describe in the book when they were saying that, but I guess there's an area where they could walk you through the back area into a back part of the Islands of Adventure from the Hollywood Park. But the thing is, it's weird. So it's like, I call it the Hollywood Park. It's technically Universal Florida. I just call it the Hollywood Park because it's similar to more the Universal Hollywood. But yeah, I think it'll pretty much house itself there for good, for at least a time period. I think maybe they could do maybe possibly what I think Universal will do before they actually move the entire like Halloween Horror Nights, if that's ever the case. I think they may have their own Halloween event, like a kind of a signature thing. Like, you know how like the Wizarding World and Diagon Alley have their like holiday Hogwarts special there, and the Grinch does the Grinchmas and Islands of Adventure in his section. I think what they'll do is maybe they'll do some kind of special Halloween themed like shows at the Dark Universe, at least. You know, at least
I think
so,
something
there.
That would
I
make
think that'll
sense,
be and I think they'll do that like in its first year or two. And remember, there's already 2 phases planned for this, which is possibly Tim's ripoff ride, and then this one.
Yes.
And well, and there's also like, I like what Mike and EB. I don't know if you heard Mike and EB's thing where they were talking about the Wolfman coaster that's there, that they were testing, and how they said like they were basing it on Teen Wolf instead, which was hilarious. But yeah, so supposedly like it's like a launch spinning coaster that goes in a building a few times, and EB had a good idea. I hope he's right. How they said like each time you go through the building, the Wolfman is in a different state of transformation, which would actually be
that would be cool
idea. I don't know what it is, but you can watch the testing video. Just Google.
I mean,
Wolfman. I think it's a Curse of the Wolfman. It's called the coaster. So
I've already taught my mom. So my mom recently said, you know, because we come up, the kids are getting older, and you know, my mom's always coming up with different things around Christmas because she's like, you know, you guys are too old for like all these presents and stuff, but she kind of wants to get more in the mindset of creating memories more than goods, because we have enough toys, we have enough stuff, we have enough electronics, we have enough all that. And she said, you know, what would what's your ideas around this year, 2024 Christmas, is we say we put money aside for a trip, like a big family trip. And
that's cool.
And I was like, I like that. I love that idea. And she said, and I really, really want to go back to Universal. And she's been to Disney with us, the kids and everything, but we've never been to Universal together. I think she's been down there with a friend, and they did like a 1 or 2 day thing. She's never done like a true family trip to Universal. And she said, what would you think of that? And I said, well, your timing is excellent, because I want to go to Universal when this Epic Universe opens. I don't care how crowded it is. I'm going. Yeah. And so she said, well, let's make that a plan. So we are, this Christmas, that's going to be our present, is money towards this big Epic Universe trip. So it's already on the books for me. Like I will be there. Yeah. Somehow, some way.
We were supposed to go together, Tim. It's a Civil Gore trip.
I know we can still we go back for Halloween Horror Nights for sure.
True, we could do that. Yeah. No, I kind of want to. Yeah, part of me wants to go. I wonder if like our podcast counts as like we could get like, not that we get on the media list for Universal per se, but maybe we could just get into that land early, or we can get maybe we can get someone on the show that could just talk about that, and we befriend with that.
I don't care about the rest of your park. Just give us these.
Yeah, look, I can give you like a quarter price ticket that will only get you into the monster section, but the rest, that's it. You can't go anywhere else. But yeah, and it's what's unique, what's challenging about that park, I think, is remember it's like on their second section of the property, so it's like, you know, there's no way. It's not like the other ones where you can literally walk to park to park. You're going to have to get on some sort of transportation.
It's going to be like Disney. Yeah. You have to get on something different to get there.
Yeah. So there's no way like you're not going to end up getting like a Hogwarts Express experience, I don't think. I think it's way too far for that. So you're not going to be connecting the Harry Potter things like that. However, they could possibly, facing on the whole portal theme, they could have themed transportation, like certain buses that go there, maybe like these magical buses that could like kind of give you partly the experience on the way there to kind of prep you for what you're about to do. I don't know. There's a million things they could do with this. They haven't really it's basically like everyone knows the basics of it, but no one knows the true details of how they're going to do everything. But I do know that they're talking about facial recognition, so you don't need like really a ticket, like because to go into the park, it's like, and there's a hotel like in the middle of the park.
Yeah, there's like a hotel in the park, not near the park or across from the park. There's a hotel inside of the park, which is insane.
Yeah, and so so basically that like they have to come up with some kind of new technology because there's no like they basically said like people will be able to like at one point remember they said like you can enter the hotel and the Celestial Gardens part like certain parts of it, but to get into the actual portal part is where it recognizes your face or something with your ticket. I don't know. This was, that's the thing. They haven't gone into those details. They haven't confirmed those. Those are all rumors, but either way, I think it'll be a fun story to cover as it develops. Of course, we're, for this podcast, we'll spare you every other land, but except we'll just keep going to the Dark Universe land.
Yeah.
But,
all right. Well, I guess it's time to get to our main
Yes.
feature. Again, like we said, this was a collaboration between George Romero and Dario Argento. It's called Two Evil Eyes. Of course, the first segment was directed by George Romero. And this is based on The Facts in the Case of Mr. Valdemar, which is probably a lesser known Poe story. I don't think many people know that one as well as some of the others. And Dario Argento did The Black Cat, which of course there's been entire movies made around this story. Of course, it featured prominently in the recent House of Usher Netflix series by Mike Flanagan.
I still gotta watch that.
Oh, which is so good. This one stars Adrienne Barbeau as Jessica Valdemar, Rami Zada as Dr. Robert Hoffman, Bingo O'Malley as Ernest Valdemar, E.G. Marshall.
Sounds like doesn't that Bingo O'Malley sound like a catcher for the Baltimore Orioles from the 70s?
Yeah. E.G. Marshall, which another Creepshow alumni.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of Creepshow talk in this with that first segment. We'll get into that. Yeah.
He plays Stephen Pike, Harvey Keitel as Roderick Usher, Madeline Potter as Annabelle, John Amos as Detective Legrand, Sally Kirkland as Eleonora, Kim Hunter as Mrs. Pym, Martin Balsam as Mr. Pym. And some of those names, if you're a Poe fan, you might recognize like the name of Pym and Eleonora. Usher, of course. There's a lot of Poe references outside of the stories that they actually adapted. The synopsis here is a duo of Edgar Allan Poe adaptations about a greedy wife's attempt to embezzle her dying husband's fortune and a sleazy reporter's adoption of a strange black cat. So I did read some trivia around this movie, and here's a fact that's going to blow your mind, Ryan. So originally, this was going to be a 4-story anthology, and take a wild guess as to what the other 2 directors were going to be.
They're pretty, obviously they got to be pretty prominent.
Huge.
Right?
They would be on the Mount Rushmore of horror directors.
Oh, John Carpenter.
John Carpenter, yep. And what's the other one?
Oh, let's see. I'm probably gonna like kick myself when I hear it.
Yes, you will.
Oh God. Stanley. No, he's not really. I was gonna say Stanley Kubrick, but he's not really a horror director per se.
He's usually mentioned in the same breath as John Carpenter. I'll put it that way.
Oh my God! Why am I not thinking of it?
Okay, I'll let you off the hook. Wes Craven.
Yeah.
Wes Craven.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh,
You're
okay.
overthinking.
Wow, that would have been great.
Yeah, so
I think I was like way thinking like someone like a little different than Wes Craven, even though he's the right choice, like a perfect horror director.
So unfortunately, John Carpenter and Wes Craven backed out, so that left only 2 segments, and that's how we got.
Was this going to be a 4-hour movie, or were they going to shorten each of these segments?
I feel like they would have probably shortened them, and you know what? I don't know that would have necessarily been a bad thing, because I
was going to say I think they were a little too long.
These were a little too long, yeah, and we'll get into that because that is one of my biggest criticisms of the movie.
Yeah,
but yeah,
so it feels stretched out, especially the Harvey Keitel part.
Yeah. So the first segment, we'll talk about the first segment that George Romero did. This one is The Facts in the Case of Mr. Valdemar. This one was so up his alley because this is essentially a zombie story. So in the original Poe story, it's about a mesmerist, a hypnotist. Back then it was all about mesmerism and the idea that you could hypnotize people,
which is still in this.
It is. It's definitely. I wouldn't even say it's loosely based. It's pretty closely based. It's just modernized it and added some trappings around it. There was a little more. It added some details that are more like EC horror comic, which you can definitely see the Creepshow vibes in here. But
very Creepshow vibe. I mean, look at. I mean, not only between Barbeau and E.G. Marshall in it, but just the whole that whole the scorned, like the double cross on a husband or a scorned wife.
So
like
common.
those are so repeated tales, and they even use that in Creepshow. I mean, it reminded me of the water zombie ones a little bit. It's
there's always those EC horror comics. If you guys have never read those, they typically or a lot of times they involved a cheating husband, a scorned spouse, a couple trying to steal something from somebody. There's always like this revenge element to it where the bad people get their comeuppance. Like that's a big theme running throughout these EC horror comics, and no exception here. And the original Poe story did not have all those trappings of that kind of stuff, but it did have the central idea of somebody hypnotizes someone who is on their deathbed, and then they get, by virtue of that, they get trapped between life and death. And it's actually really kind of a creepy concept, especially if you think about how long ago that was that Poe imagined that. But that it comes off very creepy. But essentially in quote unquote modern terms, they become zombies because they're undead. They're trapped between living and life and death. And I thought that this segment really felt like Romero. Like, it's so funny. A lot of anthologies you see, and maybe the stories kind of all blend in. This one, I mean, there is no doubt that this is a George Romero directed segment, and there's no doubt that the Black Cat is a Dario Argento directed segment. Like, their fingerprints are all over these. Yeah. And Romero's is, like we said, is definitely has that EC horror comics vibe. It's a little more toned down in terms of, I mean, it's still got some great gore effects inside makeup and stuff, but it's definitely toned down compared to Argento's, which is a little bit more crazy out there. Yeah. And so I thought it was really cool to see how the signature that each director put on each of these segments. But obviously Adrienne Barbeau is awesome in it. She's always good. And
it's so funny. She plays these sinister characters sometimes, and she's like the sweetest person ever in real life.
Like we said, I wanted to put her in my pocket. I wanted to take her home. I just put her in my pocket and take her home with me. But she's awesome. So I really like this one, but my God, it takes a long time. And this goes back to what we were talking about. These probably would have worked better as 30-minute segments.
Right. I feel like they stretched it. Oh my God. When they lost the other two directors or something.
It was, and I was watching the timestamp on this. It was at least 20 minutes into the first segment before it ever got anywhere close to interesting. Yeah. And it's not really until like the last, I'd say 15 minutes that it gets really, like the horror really hits home. And
there's like there's a lot of slow setup.
Yes.
And like I feel like, and fluff would be the wrong word, because it's not like they put anything in there that was just like ridiculous. Like, it all made sense to be in there, but it also could have just been easily not in there, and you wouldn't have lost the feel of the story. Like, you get pretty much in the first 5 minutes, okay, Adrienne Barbeau is trying to screw her husband over. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, boom. She's meeting with the lawyer. She's planning this. It's the typical thing. Like, this guy is lying on his deathbed. She's young, attractive woman. You get what's going on here, okay? But, like, so you figure, okay, so they're going to go home and it's going to boom. And, based on knowing that it's Romero and seeing Creepshow like we did, and just kind of knowing Poe, and even without knowing the story, like, you kind of know, okay, what's this going to happen? Like, he's not going to, like, he's not going to stay dead, or something is going to be, they're going to keep failing at their attempt to do what they're doing. And, no matter what happens is going to be, and it just, I feel like they just drew out, like literally, like, there was, like, the editor must have, like, didn't exist almost. It's like, I think they just filmed everything and patched it together. And
I feel like maybe I don't know this for a fact because it wasn't in the trivia, but I feel like when Carpenter and Craven dropped out, I feel like they maybe decided they had to make this pad out to the two segments that they had. I can't imagine that they were going to make a 4-hour movie. So I have to believe they were originally written as half-hour segments, and then they had to flesh them out a little bit.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, because and the funny thing is, I feel like it's even more noticeable in the second story, even though we were talking about it in this one. Because I think this one, it just takes a long time to get to the real true horror part.
The payoff, yeah.
But in the next one, I feel like which we'll get to in a second, I feel like just everything was drawn out. Like, and it's like almost like Harvey Keitel's getting frustrated. Like, might have been the fact that, like, when is my segment going to end? Frustration part of it, it's like, because we'll definitely get to the Harvey Keitel moments. But
but there's so many great, like, not really cameos, but I guess they kind of are. Like Tom Atkins comes in at the end.
Oh
of
yeah,
this one, which I totally was not prepared for.
Oh, and I didn't even put him in the thing because he's such a minor.
He's such a minor role, but it's such a badass role too at the same time because he's always badass in everything he does. And I was I was like overjoyed, like that probably saved the segment for me, is just him coming in at the end. But so it's so hard for me to judge this movie in some way because I love the director, I love the cast, I actually like the story. I just think it should have been shorter, and I like the payoff, but it's a long time to get to the payoff. So I think as long as you're patient and you understand that going in, I think you'll really like this. But I can see
it's not
why
like it's
people
boring.
Don't. It's not boring. No,
it's
not
just
boring.
you're just kind of like you're waiting for the inevitable. And I think since it's like, even without knowing the story, like I said, but it's very obvious where this is going to head. I think since you kind of can pick that off, you just kind of want to get to it already.
Yeah.
And that's I don't even know if that's a fault of the storytelling and everything, because like I said, it's not like there's fluff in there. Like every part like that's in there has its place. It's just all it could have been expendable at the same time.
What's funny is if this had been part of like a night gallery or something like that, an anthology show, and this had been one episode and it was 30-40 minutes, I think it would have been freaking awesome. Like I think you would have said that was like one of the best episodes of so and so horror anthology, but unfortunately it kind of got strapped into this movie, which technically they could have made this an hour and a half movie and trimmed both of these segments by 15 minutes easily.
Easily.
And I think it would have I think it would have made the movie better, but who am I to say?
And you know what? When you were talking about Tom Atkins, I realized something. Just kind of this thought kind of hit me on the biggest claim to fame that Tom Atkins has is he literally turned a movie that was like literally despised at its release, and it became now one of the most like beloved thing with Halloween 3. If you think about it, that is all Tom Atkins that made that movie become such a cult classic and such a fan favorite. Because remember when it came out, like everyone was just upset there was no Michael Myers in it.
Oh yeah,
and, like Tom Atkins was like just like cast aside. But as his legend grew, and people, I feel like that movie just grew, and it's like, and I'm like, now they're like, oh my god, this is a Tom Atkins vehicle. Now. This is no longer a Halloween movie. This is a Tom Atkins movie.
And that movie kind of cemented his legend status as like this silver fox that like could F your mom and get away with it, and
you got it's Stacey Nelkin, who at the time was the attractive young woman, and he was like, and you're like you're thinking like, man, if Tom Atkins can but then again, like then you realize you're like, wait a minute, I don't care what, like if I'm like 30 years the younger and perfectly coiffed hair and buffed, there's something about Tom Atkins.
Yeah,
he's
I'm
just
not Tom
too
Atkins.
cool.
Nobody's
Tom Atkins cool, but Tom Atkins.
That's right. Exactly.
There's like this whole level of coolness there's like cool, super cool, and Tom Atkins cool.
Yeah,
like
he's at the very top. He's like whole nubba level. As they used to say on was that in Living Color? Was that? Or whole nubba level.
I love that show.
The second segment, I missed that show, man.
Is that playing on anything? Like, does Tubi have it? Because I notice every once in a while Tubi has all these. Like, I noticed they snuck in like Too Close for Comfort is in there, and like they have all these old school TV shows that are like coming in there. But I'm wondering if like in Living Color's on one of those like a Tubi. I gotta look.
Nope, because it is not online anywhere.
Really?
Anywhere. You can't rent it. You can't stream it. It's nowhere.
Thankfully, I basically didn't succumb to watching all the Danger Mouse episodes, by the way. Like I had thought I was going to yet. But I will get to it. I will just get to it. I just realized I got to watch 300 more horror movies in there.
The second segment.
This one's funny. Because first of all, we just have to say, I don't know who thought Harvey Keitel in a beret was a smart
I thought
choice.
When I first saw it, he's taking a picture, right? And I was like, okay, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt, and like maybe that's Harvey Keitel's like lucky artist hat he just puts on as a gag. Whenever he's doing his photography or whatever, he kind of puts that on, and I didn't think any more of it. But then he keeps showing up with this hat on, this beret on, throughout the entire rest of the movie, and I'm like, there's no way. Like, there's no way.
No, yeah, and he's literally wearing these like and he's wearing that typical like Parisian artist like not turtleneck, but you know what I'm saying? That like shirt. That like skin tight shirt that's like a turtleneck without the turtleneck. It's
to be fair, we know Harvey Keitel as Mr. Wolf from Pulp Fiction, or like from mob movies and stuff like
Reservoir Dogs, and Bad Lieutenant, and like
there's
what's
like
that other
this
one? Mean Streets.
Like
that's Harvey Keitel.
It's so far away from French artist that you could possibly get. So I just could not take him seriously. But although I love.
This lane of like I feel like there's this like Harvey Keitel like somewhere like along the line someone traveled back in time to change something in his life and they set off these branching Harvey Keitel multiverses, because there's the one like this one, and this one totally leads to where he like shows his dong in the piano like that. I feel like that's yes. Harvey Keitel multiverse here. The other one like the Reservoir Dogs, Mean Street, Bad Lieutenant, all that. That's all like the other strand of multiverse of Harvey Keitel.
Yeah. He split into
Someone needs
two.
to do a deep dive documentary on that, because I think that you'll find that someone went back to reverse something in his life and screwed up the Harvey Keitel timeline.
So he's actually operating in two different timelines now.
He is. There's like two Harvey Keitels existing in the same universe.
Oh my gosh. And he's constantly annoyed. Like we said, I don't know if he was annoyed by the pace. I don't think he's just constantly annoyed in life in general, like all the time. But he is so annoyed in this movie, and it was hilarious because he's, obviously, he's annoyed at the black cat, but he's also annoyed by everything else in his life. So to see him
by
annoyed,
his neighbors, by his house.
So to see him annoyed by a cat on top of it just cracks me up, because cats annoy a lot of people. Like, I have two cats. I love my cats. They're super annoying at times.
Yeah, but cats could be a-holes sometimes.
They're often a-holes. Yeah. Like, more often than not, I would probably say. And I say that as a genuine cat lover.
Yeah, and I love cats. I mean, more of a dog person, just historically, but I love cats. I mean, when I lived with my friend Mark, at one point he had two cats. I love the cats, so it's like not like I don't love cats,
but they're just
I mean, they could be serious a-holes. Like they'll go up and just swat you for no scratch you for no reason.
Like I said in the text feed, like Emma jumped on my desk the other day, looked me right in the eye, and just knocked a cup of water over on my desk. And she looked at me like, "What are you going to do about it?" And what do? I pick her up and I kiss her. That's what, and she knows that. She knows she can knock over a bottle of water, and I'll go, "Damn it, Emma!" And then I'll pick her up and I'll love all over her. She knows that. Yeah, nothing's gonna happen.
Yeah. One of my cousin's cat used to like hide out, and and you'd walk by and it'd dart out and go like in the back of your leg, and then keep going, and I'm
like Gage from Pet Sematary just takes a
that's what I felt like. I was like one step away from Fred Gwynn. I got this big scratch on the back of my calf. It's like that's why I never could enter your calf contest between you and Ken, because my calf has a permanent scar from a cat. Oh. No, it does. It went away. So I mean, it's like the cat's weird. So like that was to me what made this one so enjoyable, because you could already see that like Harvey Keitel wasn't the most patient of man.
No,
man in this thing, and so I knew once the cat started to do its thing that we were going to get some magic here.
Yes.
with Harvey Keitel screaming.
And also, this thing has, like, Argento throws, like, gore stuff in here that really didn't need to be there. He just threw it in there. Like, there's a opening sequence where, I guess Harvey Keitel's he's like a crime photographer, because he's on scene of this crime.
Because he's like friendly with the cops in the beginning. So I think he is a crime photographer, or he's just or he gets for hire, and that's one of his things he gets hired for, I think.
Yeah, and so at the beginning he's at a crime scene that is the Pit and the Pendulum, where a woman's been cut in half by the pendulum, which I thought was super cool.
Yeah. And you know what? Like it took me a second to get that reference. Yeah, it didn't dawn on me.
But first, it was I mean, it was like a full cut in half torso with guts hanging out and everything, and I was like, oh my god, you could tell Argento was into this. And the payoff for the black cat is also freaking awesome. Like there's some really great gore effects in there. Now I will say, is the movie dated? Yes, it's pretty dated. It's pretty dated. I will say, even for 1990, it feels pretty dated now. But I loved the payoff of the black cat. I thought it was great, and I think to me it was the stronger of the two segments. Even though, like you said, there's a lot of padding.
Yeah, and the reason why I think this was a stronger one is I feel like it was almost like the first one was more of like a like could have just easily snuck into a creep show movie. And so it's like I feel like it's been done before. Like, it probably because you and I read the EC comics a lot. Watched Creep Show, we've watched all those kind of those, so we're very familiar with the scorned person genre, so to speak, or the plot to take someone's money kind of thing. The basic so I think it's like, so it was so easy to like see where this was going. I think it was probably not. And again, I want to stress that it was still enjoyable. The ride was enjoyable. It's just but it took by the time I got to the payoff, the other one, this one was like even though there was a lot of extra stuff in it, the Harvey Keitel like fight with the cat, like his like annoyance with like anyone that came into his life, pretty much at
Yes.
point, kind of made it so entertaining that it took it to a new level. So you're like, okay, well, you know what, I know this is gonna take a while to get to where we're going, because I'm looking at this thing, we got another 40 minutes left in this, but you know what, let's just let me watch what happens to Harvey Keitel. I'm just gonna enjoy his annoying, level, things that are happening to him. Like all the annoyances coming his way. I'll just go with it.
and I just love that, like the little gore touches here and there. That there's a different level of darkness where I think Romero's horror has a little bit of humor to it.
It's like their dark humor, yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bit of humor to it.
Like,
I think the Argento segment's like a little darker, to me, that appealed to me more.
Yeah, like the perfect segment is like when they're trying to bring the body down the stairs and he gets the shirt gets caught on the railing and they're sitting there, and then right as that happens, the bell rings and it's that lady, the nurse, coming in, and like, so you got this like, whoa, like if it was like a sitcom, it would like pause and like go to commercial, like, oh, what are we gonna do, kind of thing. And it was like, so it had like, and Romero's always good at that. Like he always has that like little bit of like little hints of comedic, dark comedy, of course, kind of thing in his signature. So yeah, I mean, you could like, there's no doubt like who directed each segment. You're not going to get confused. But yeah, so I think it's like, but the second one was definitely more like, definitely more the horror and kind of gore element to it. So
yeah, I'm glad I watched this one. I thought it was actually much better than I expected. I thought it was probably going to be like, I've never heard of this. It's got two like tremendous directors. It can't be good. Like it's got to be like,
why was this not more of a thing?
Why did we not know about this? It's got to be like some big misfire by both of them. But I was pleasantly surprised. Other than it being a little long, I thought it was excellent. It was a lot of fun, and I would definitely highly recommend it, especially if you're like a fan of Creep Show. If you're a fan of Argento movies, obviously. So check that one out. It's on Shudder right now, and Two Evil Eyes. Kind of a doesn't. I don't really understand the title reference, what that means, Two Evil Eyes.
I mean, is it the cat's Two Evil Eyes, or is it two stories?
Yeah, I don't know.
And they're both the evil guys in it.
And maybe that's another reason why it's just not been on our radar, because the name is so generic. But I don't know. Anyway, check it out on Shudder. I think you guys will like it.
Yeah. And we did say, Tim and I both in agreement, we think a great movie would be Paul Giamatti being annoyed, along with Harvey Keitel being annoyed, like in some kind of like buddy road. It would be like if imagine he redid Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but with Harvey Keitel and Paul Giamatti.
But it'd almost be like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but both of them were Neil Page.
Yeah, exactly. Like it would be like Del Griffith sadly would not exist.
No, it would just be two Neil Pages.
It would just be two Neil Pages annoying the hell out of each other. Like that would be great. It was like almost like, do you ever see which was a lot of people say it was very similar to Planes, Trains, like Due Date, with Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis. Yeah. Which it's funny too, because there's a line in there that I quote constantly, and it just drives Julie crazy because I've never actually experienced it, what they do. But there's a line that Zach Galifianakis, he comes out of the rest stop and he goes, these rest stops, they just have the nicest showers, So of course, every time Julie and I are on a road trip, which we do many of, I go out of a rest stop and I come out and say that, and of course I did not take a shower, but I feel like I have to say that, and she just kind of gives the traditional eye roll,
the wife eye roll, which is
which
we're both very familiar with.
I think Julie and Olivia they practice that together at some point. They probably have secret calls.
Yeah,
compare the
well.
things
Olivia gets
said.
plenty of practice. Don't worry.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to practice on her own time.
Yeah. So if the gods are out there, somehow put Harvey Keitel and Paul
Yes.
Giamatti in
Oh my
a movie
God.
together where they get annoyed, and then literally you could just have Harvey Keitel show up with a bottle of Merlot, and there you go.
There you go.
Annoyance number one right there for Paul Giamatti.
Speaking of alcohol, what's our beer
Yeah.
pairing?
So I found a good one. So I was trying to go with with the overall Two Evil Eyes theme, but I decided to go segment based, and I went with, of course, the more memorable segment to us because of the hilarity of Harvey Keitel. So I went with the Black Cat, and I found a Black Cat Porter, which I believe I've actually had because I've gone to this brewery, which is Zero Gravity in Burlington, Vermont. Julie and I did a couple trips to Vermont where we hit a bunch of breweries, and this is one that actually you can find Zero Gravity at. They travel well. One of their beers travels well. I forgot the name of the one that I always see, but you'll probably find it in a good beverage place. We usually have a Zero Gravity beer. So this it's only 5%. So for a porter, it's kind of low on the
Interesting.
ABV. But it's a smooth and creamy dark ale full of deep roasted malt character, yet nimble on the palate. Chocolate and coffee notes are balanced with a sly hop bitterness. Forget your superstitions and cross paths with this Black Cat more than once. So that really fits the movie.
I like that.
Harvey Keitel surely cross paths with this cat more than
Yes,
once.
definitely. All right, so our fan topic food question, which we've kind of took a different bent towards the end of last season, and I really like this. Is we're asking questions kind of based on the movie that we just watched.
Yeah, there's it's almost like a real life thing, a question, but kind of based somehow ties into what we discussed. And I figure that seems to work well.
Yeah, I like it.
Get some good conversation. So this one, Tim, I think you'll like this because you're a big reader to begin with. So
Yeah.
So basically, since both the segments were based on Poe's stories, is there a short story or book that you would love to see made into a movie? Now it could be one that hasn't been made or one that was made into a movie that you really didn't think did the book justice, and you'd want a remake. And I already know you're going to say Dark Tower is one of them. So beyond that, let's skip that one out.
No,
let's not put that one in.
I actually had
that'd be your number one.
I actually had an instant. I knew the answer to this one instantly because it's one of. Well, there's two of them actually.
Funny, I have two also.
Two of my favorite books, and they're desperately both due for a reread because I read these many years ago. The first one is Boy's Life by Robert McCammon.
Was that but they was a De Niro movie, right? Was that based off of that, or is that a different?
No, this is not.
Okay.
No, this is not.
That's
related.
not This Boy's Life. Okay.
No,
because I was gonna say that movie was incredible. I love that movie.
No,
I don't
this
think that
one
needs a remake.
Robert McCammon's a horror author. I'd say horror fantasy, maybe. His books don't. He's got some great horror novels, but they always kind of have a touch of fantasy to them. And Boy's Life is I would say leans more fantasy than horror, but it really has that feel of Stephen King's It in terms of when they were younger, like that section.
Oh, okay,
of it. So
cool.
when the nostalgia of growing up in that time period is definitely about that. It's about kids. Kind of slice of life. Think about Stand By Me. That kind of era, and it's early '60s. It takes place in early '60s. It has a lot of commentary on the civil rights movement and racial things at the time. But I don't want to give anything away about the plot, but suffice it to say, there's a whole mystery involved, and it's kind of taken from this point of view of these kids growing up in the early 60s with the backdrop of the civil rights movement and everything going on. It was a fantastic book. I absolutely love it. I'm shocked that it's never been made into a film. So that would be my first choice. My second choice is another one of my favorite novels by Mark Frost, who you may know, Brian, from Twin Peaks. His novel, The List of Seven. If you've never read this, so good. I love historical fiction. And I really like historical fiction in which the characters are based off real people. And
Johnny Appleseed, that kind of historical fiction.
There's a weird subgenre of historical fiction where it stars Sir Arthur Conan Doyle as himself, but he's solving a mystery that's completely made up. There was a series of books that starred Edgar Allan Poe was the main character, but it was the real, quote unquote, real Edgar Allan Poe, but he was a character and he got caught up in a mystery. So it's a fictional novel, but it stars real people. And it's really, really interesting. And the List of Seven is like this. So the main character in the List of Seven is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And they get involved in like this supernatural mystery. And they meet like Bram Stoker's in it. He makes an appearance as a character. Cool. It is so super cool. It's one of my favorite books. Obviously, you know, Mark Frost from Twin Peaks. He's a great writer. And this book was absolutely one of my favorites growing up. It was published back in 93, and that's probably when I read it. It was my senior year of high school. So that one has never been made into a movie. I know there was talk of it being made into a movie at one point, but I don't think that ever happened. So those would be my two top on the list, no question about it. Those two, List of Seven and Boy's Life.
Okay, so I have two, technically. Neither one are horror in any way. But, although you might think the first one I'm going to say is, and that's The Pigman. I don't know if you remember that book. I know you're thinking like that. There's a horror movie called The Pigman. But
and there's a Seinfeld segment where Kramer sees a pig.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, which always makes me think of this book. But so basically, it's one of those like young adult novels, and it's like these two teen troublemakers kind of like find each other, and then they end up they prank this guy, who like they like kind of like, it's weird how he kind of like plays along, because he's like, they're trying to pretend to extort money at him, and they play, and they feel bad about it. So they actually, the two of the group go and like meet this guy, and then they befriend him, and he's like super nice, and they have all these, they kind of have these adventures together. But it's like, you know, and like some things happen, you know, they make some bad decisions. It's definitely kind of got like some sad points and some like coming of age tales and everything. But it was one book that I used to just always read when I was a kid, and I was always surprised that they never even made like one of those like television movies for it, because it's so ripe for one of those like after school special type of deals. And they actually made a sequel to the book, which I can't really go into because it'll kind of spoil the first one if you decide to read it. But it's one I've reread as an adult too, and it's still, you know, it's still kind of still is good, you know, in terms of that. But the next one definitely makes a difference on when you read it, I think, even though I still read this one as an adult too. It's by Jerry Spinelli, called Space Station 7th Grade. Have you heard of that one?
No.
So this one was what was so good about this book, and I still remember how I came upon this book. We had a book report, thing in class where people would read about a book, and this one of my classmates read about this book, Space Station 7th Grade, and it's about this group of friends, basically this main kid named Jason McAllister, and he goes, it's basically told through his eyes, and it's basically his group of friends are about to go into 7th grade. So it's one of these things of coming of age, but it dealt with like topics that, like, you know, I had at my age, being in 7th grade at that point, never really saw in book form. Like there's one whole sequence about how he first discovered all his like classmates have pubic hair and stuff, and like they talk about like the different like sex things, and there's cursing in it. And up until that point, I never really read that in a book, you know, that was like kind of meant for my age. And it goes through all different things you would expect about trying to deal with high school and friendships and crushes, and and Jerry Spinelli is like this award-winning author, and this book I know is a big thing. But the reason why it's called Space Station 7th Grade is because he's kind of building this space station, like out of like materials. That's one of his hobbies. He's building the space station. But it's really good, you know, and he ends up like, you know, all different things about happen to him, how he gets in trouble, and he gets suspended and it's like all these different things that you could kind of like, I guarantee you, like everyone has experienced at least one point in their high school, life, like how, like, your friends will, like, one of your best friends will like maybe do better at something, and then there's this like little bit of a rivalry that develops, even though he's your best friend, kind of thing. And you just hit everything. It manages to hit every mark. And the fact that this has never been a movie again, like, it astounds me, because it should have been at least like maybe like one of those kind of like after school special type of movies. based on what it
you'd
dealt
think
with, and it was just always like, look it up, because I think it'd be an intriguing. You'd probably even get a kick out of it now, honestly, because it'll bring back the nostalgia of seventh grade. It deals with everything, like every topic, like life, death, romance. Like it has it all, but like seen through like this seventh grader's eyes. So like now you read it and you're like you may find it a little silly, but like since you didn't read it, but I remember when I read it, I was in seventh grade, so it kind of like brings me back all those memories.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
But yeah, so those are two books that I always was like, how were they never like made into a movie? And I always said, like, if I ever become a director in Hollywood, this is one of these things I'm gonna look out and try and buy this property and see if I can make it. But I mean, it's almost like, you kind of think of it. It's like like a less raunchy version of American Pie, a little bit, where you have like that, the first one, I know as they get on.
Yeah. And there's so many like coming of age stories are so popular. I'm surprised it hasn't been made.
Yeah, I really am not sure on why that's never like been a thing. It's like it seems really weird that like certain things just don't. Like you wonder, like these books were so popular. I remember that. Why is it not why is it not a book? Why is it not a movie? Sorry, why is it not a movie? The book was so popular, kind of thing. So it's really weird on how like these things like. You think about it now and you're just like, oh man, that really should have made a movie out of that,
And I'm sure there's so many out there that they've bought the movie rights for, but just getting it greenlit is so difficult that they just languish for years. Like when I was reading about the list of 7 movie, I think that was like discussed way back in 2013, which is 11 years ago now, and it never made it. And you would think with Mark Frost being Twin Peaks and all that, like if anybody could get a book adapted into a movie, it would be him. But
yeah,
it just has never happened. So I don't know. Anyway, you guys have any ideas about stories or books that you think would make excellent movies? Drop us a line at our Gmail address, civilgorepodcast@gmail.com, or hit us up on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, or we're now on Blue Sky. We're on Threads. We're everywhere.
Yeah, we're anywhere you want. We're somewhere.
Yes. All right, so we'll see you guys here. Oh, I botched that. I will see you guys here back next. Nope. I will see you guys back here next week. I don't know, something like that.
Something along.
Brian, help me out. Bail me out here.
Yeah, basically,
we're tired.
We'll be here next week with an episode.
Yes, there you go.
Don't know what it is yet, but we'll be there.
Yeah, stay away from those black berets.
Yes, and
I wish somebody
don't bring a cat to Harvey Keitel's house if you're his friend. He won't like it.
He gets really annoyed.
He does very easily too.
See you.